This is the first Erev Shabbos after the clocks change, so we are mindful of the time. Before we know it, it's going to be candle lighting and also time to go to shul. We're up to Parshas Chayei. I think everybody knows the principle Maisa Avo Siman Labanim, which means that the stories of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and the Imahos, it's not just about them. It's not a biography, interesting stories, but it really lays the blueprint for what's going to happen to their children. And that's a very important principle. In general, that idea is extended when it comes to other biblical characters of significance. So for example, if we have the figure Yishmael, who is considered to be the ancient father of the Arabs, the Arab nations, they associate themselves as descendants of Ishmael. So the behavior of Ishmael really also is an insight. It's a glimpse into what's going to happen within the ranks of his progeny. In other words, it might not be Maisa Ovo Siman Labanim, that it's a blueprint, but we can detect the DNA. We can see the trends. We see the character. So for example, and this is where it's very interesting, at the end of this Sedra, besides we have in the beginning Sarah Imenu passing away at 127 years of age, Chayei, but we also have the passing of Avram Avinu, and he was 175. And the Pasuk tells us that he was buried by Yitzchak and Yishmael. And Chazal say that conspicuously, because Yitzchak is mentioned first in the Pasuk, so that means that Yishmael, by allowing Yitzchak to take precedence, going before himself, Yitzchak took the lead, that means that Yishmael did teshuvah, which we would say, Mikan, it's not just that Yishmael as a private individual repented and accepted the place of Yitzchak in the paradigm, but it means that eventually his children will also do teshuvah. So that's very promising that eventually that will take place, even though right now it appears as if they're very far from it, to say the least. So that's something to take from the Sedra. Again, Rashi points this out. But let's probe this a little bit further. Just because he allows Yitzchak to go before him, that means that he did tshuva, it's repentance. Let's trace the life of Yishmael. When he was 17, according to Chazal, he went off the derech. He was involved in idolatry. He was involved in murder. He was involved in illicit relationships. That's why Sarah sent him away with Hagar. That was last week. Now, he resurfaces at the end of Parshas Vayera, because even though the Pasuk doesn't say so explicitly, but he was part of the Akedah. He was from the Shnei Erev. It was Eliezer and Yishmael who accompanied Abraham and Yitzchak to the Akedah. So it sounds as if he was already on the right track then, if he's part of that very important mission. Yitzchak Avinu was 37 at the time, which means 14 years older was Yishmael, so he was 51. So maybe he did tshuva already at age 51. At the time of the burial of Avraham, if we continue with the math, Yitzchak then was 75, so plus another 14, so Yishmael was 89. So either he did tshuva when he was at the age of 89, or maybe even earlier when he was 51, or maybe even earlier than that. We just know that at 17, he went off the derech. So one could speculate, if we're again applying this idea that the DNA of Yishmael is that he is wild, he's a para Adam, he has this wild nature, almost like a wild donkey, but he becomes an Adam, he does tshuva, he comes back. And when in his lifetime did that take place? And what does that mean for his descendants? When will they do tshuva? Final thought, the tshuva is that he understood that he was important and that Avram Avinu loved him and that he had his place in the world. It's just that he wasn't the direct heir in terms of the Masorah, the tradition of Avraham. And that's something that the world has to appreciate. We all can't be the same person with the same identity, with the same mission. The idea of diversity, equity, inclusion undermines the idea actually of individuality and knowing one's place. Not everyone can be everything. And eventually Yishmael realized that, and that was why he was loved by Abraham, and it all ended well. Let's hope that this episode ends well sooner rather than later, and tshuva is something that overtakes Bnei Yishmael. Along with Klal Yisrael, we have to do tshuva, and the world at large. Wishing everybody a good Shabbos.